it's Andrew Michael, and welcome back to another Friday Bible study with Andrew Michael. And I hope you all have had a great week thus far, and we are going to be talking about a topic today on Friday Bible study that I think a lot of people do, especially if you're someone who's, trying to get more friendships, you're trying to build relationships, you're someone who, you're trying to see what girls like you. You're trying to figure out like what girls are into you, or more so, you're trying to figure out like, should I spend more time with God? Answer, yes. Or should I spend more time trying to please people? And the thing about being a people pleaser is if you try that, people are going to think, okay, this guy is just an attention seeker because he's trying to get everyone to like him. Right? And it's just like with YouTube. One of the biggest mistakes I see with YouTube is a lot of people will start their channels posting about anything and everything. And while at the start that's good because you're trying to figure yourself out, eventually that is not going to work out long term because your audience has no idea what you're trying to do. Your audience is not going to have any idea what your channel is about. And it's like what someone said. If it takes more than a sentence to explain what your channel is about, people are going to be confused. Whereas when you follow God and you put your time into following God, you know what you're going to get. You're going to be following a God who is righteous, and you're going to be following the Son of God, who is Jesus, who died on the cross as an atonement for our sins so that we can be saved, right? And the same thing with following Jesus. You know you're following someone who gives you a path of redemption. And so that's why you can't focus so much on being a people pleaser. You got to focus on following God. And so that is why, that is why this week on Friday Bible Study, we are going to talk about why you shouldn't focus on being a people pleaser, but you should focus on following God so that those that see you following God will want to be with you. For example, if you're someone who's in Sunday school and you're someone who's trying to see who likes you, you try to be attentive, you try to do all the prayer stuff, you try to do the announcement stuff, and you just get to see, who likes you or whatever. And then over time, if you're like me and you're an introvert and you scale back how much attention you give to people, then yeah, there's going to be a chance that people just don't talk to you anymore. But the thing is, it doesn't matter how many people talk to you. It's a matter of who is going to listen to you. Versus with God, you know He is going to listen. You know that with God, He is going to be with you. And so that is why today on Friday Bible Study, we're going to talk about why you shouldn't focus on pleasing people, but instead you should focus on pleasing God. And if people like you for following God and it's only 3 to 5 people, then guess what? You're friends with those 3 to 5 people, not the hundreds of people that claim to be your friend. And then when you scale back what you're doing and you're not as attentive of what you're doing, if you're not as social as what you're doing, all the people are going to go off and do their own thing. This is why you should focus on pleasing God, folks. And here's the thing about pleasing God that is a wonderful thing. It will not feel like you're pulling teeth just to keep God around, right? It won't feel like you have to come up with these different things just for God to like you. It won't feel like you're having to come up with different conversation starters just for Him to like you, right? It's not like it's a girl that you're into and it feels like you're pulling teeth just to ask how her day is going, where it feels like you're just trying to see what she is doing. Right? If you ask, hey, like, how is your week going? And she's like, that's good. What do you expect me to do with that? Like, what do you expect for me to do with that? Right? And I think of it just like with these two, I feel like this analogy explains why people pleasing is a bad thing. Because if you're a people pleaser, it will oftentimes feel like you're always thinking about what other people want versus what you want, right? It's just like with the product. if you make a product that you're not passionate about, but you know a lot of people like it, sure, it'll do well, but eventually you're going to get burned out quickly because you're just doing it just to please others. You don't care about what you're doing. Versus if it's a product that you care about, if not a lot of people are into that, but there's an audience already for that, then it's like, yeah, that's your core audience. These are people that are going to be loyal to what you're doing. Just like with God. Not everyone follows God, unfortunately, but those that do will find the success in following God because they're sticking with it. It's just like with the New Year's resolution. Every year with a New Year's resolution, everyone has one, but then give it a month and a ton of people will quit their New Year's resolution. But with God, you know He isn't going to change. You know that after a month, He isn't just going to say, all right, back to what I was doing. No. He is still looking after you. He is still watching over you. And He still wants you to turn your life around to follow Him. And so we're going to get into it in Galatians 1 and talk about why even Paul says that pleasing people is not the goal. Galatians 1 verse 6 through 10 says, I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting the one who called you to live in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel, which is really no gospel at all. Evidently, some people are throwing you into confusion and are trying to pervert the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach a gospel other than the one we preach to you, let them be under God's curse. As we have already said, so now I say again, if anybody is preaching to you a gospel other than what you accepted, let them be under God's curse. Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. And so Paul here in Galatians 1, 6 through 10, even he says if he were trying to please people, he would not be a servant of Christ. And that is because he would be focusing on telling people a gospel that makes them feel good. He would be focused on telling them a gospel that makes them feel like when they wake up tomorrow, they're going to have a bunch of money in their bank account. Or like in today, if they go to sleep tomorrow, they're going to have a brand new car waiting outside for them. That is not what the gospel is about. It is not about following God just so your life will get better, but it is about following God so that your life, which was surrounded by sin, will now be done to follow God so that way you can get away from sin, and so that people around you will hopefully see that you're not trying to please them anymore, but you're pleasing God. And if those people do not want to follow you, or if those people don't want to be your friends anymore, then so be it. Because at the end of the day, it's better for people who are a bad influence to you to fall away and go find someone else than for you to be with those friends that are constantly causing you to fall to sin. And this is why I tell people, this is why I've changed my mind about just follow God. And this is why you don't try so hard to make people like you. You don't try so hard for a girl to like you. If you go up to a girl and say, hey, how are you? If she makes it really hard to talk to her, you don't pursue her, right? And this is a mistake that I made last year. And I'm not going to say this girl's name. I refuse to do this. But this girl, we were just at her house. We were just chilling at her house. And we were just sitting around. And she was like, I am so glad that we're friends now. That right then and there should have told me I should stop chasing her. Because if I had realized I was friend zoned, then I wouldn't have spent so much energy chasing her. And I would have just focused on doing my own thing. And then maybe another girl, I would have, been around her, or maybe something would happen there, right? But instead, as a society, we want things to happen when we want them to. Or more so, we want things that we want to have happen We want that to happen versus what God has for us. And the thing is, you can't do that. You just can't. And so that's why, as Christians, we focus on following God. And let's say, if there's a girl out there that, liked you when you were social, if you scale it back to doing your own thing, but you're still kind of being social, but you're not super social, if that girl doesn't like you anymore, then so be it, because she wasn't meant to be. And even God would probably tell you, that girl that you were chasing was not into you, bro. She was not into you at all. She might have seen you as a friend, but that is it. And God might have a girl for you. Maybe there's a girl out there that likes you. Maybe there's a girl out there that likes talking to you. Maybe when she sees something that you post, she's always liking it. Or that she's always constantly, liking everything you do. Or when she sends you a message, she feels like, yeah, I like this guy. Right? But you don't chase it. You don't chase that person's attention. You don't chase that girl's attention and affirmation. But instead, you focus on God. You focus on your walk with God. You focus on getting into His Word more. You focus on trusting in Him. And then if people like you, cool. If not, oh well, so be it. And so I want to get into these notes so that way we already got them. Number one, and then I just alluded to this. Pleasing people is like constantly pleasing a girl just so she still likes you. Eventually, you will get exhausted and need to stop chasing something that doesn't want you back. See, and I've realized this, and I'm trying to realize this even now. When you find a little friend group to be around, let's say you give a girl a ride just to go somewhere. You're not really trying to hit on her, but you're just getting to know her. You're just talking to her, right? And it doesn't feel like you're trying to hit on her. It doesn't feel like you're trying to get in her pants, as some dudes say. But it's like you're just, getting to talk to her. You're just seeing what she's about, right? And, if something happens where she likes you, then so be it. If not, oh well, right? And it's just like what someone else said. If you're so focused on pleasing this one person that doesn't ever reciprocate, then why are you chasing her? Instead, you should focus on the people that are around you that like you. Same thing with God. It doesn't feel like you're having to pull teeth just for Him to like you. It doesn't feel like you're having to pull teeth just for Him to answer your prayers. Because sometimes when you pray to God for something that you want to have happen, He's not going to answer, not because He's not listening, but because He has an answer that is better than what you have. And so that's why you've got to focus on following God instead of trying to please people, is so that when you follow God, you understand what He's trying to do for you. Right? And this is what I'm having to constantly understand. It's a hard concept because, again, as someone who's an introvert, I will tell you, you want to have a lot of friends, but God's trying to tell you, don't do that. Don't do that, bro. Because God has people in your life for a reason. He wants you to grow with them and encourage them with the gospel. And then those same friends will turn around and encourage you with the gospel. So that way God will be glorified at the end of the day. That is the whole point of following God, is so that He can be glorified. Not us to be glorified and for other people to give us their attention and validation. Alright, next point. People will always change, and sometimes their first impression about you is the only impression they will keep about you. See, here's the thing and the difference between people and God. With people, it feels like the first impression of meeting them is the impression that matters, right? For example, if you see a girl in Sunday school that you kind of like, you go up to her and you introduce yourself to her, right? If it feels like she's standoffish, if she feels like she doesn't want to pursue anything, you don't constantly badger her. You don't constantly text her. You don't constantly pursue her. Instead, you back off. And you just say, all right, bet. Right? And it's just like with the trap I fell into in college. There was this one pretty girl, and I mean, she Even now, she is gorgeous. She is a very pretty girl. Her hair is done well. She is just a pretty girl. She is. But I fell into the trap of chasing her attention and validation. And come to find out, she does with a lot of guys. And it's sleazy, but it works. It is sleazy, but kudos to her because it freaking works. Because there are dudes that chase her left and right. But then once you realize, okay, she's not really into you, then you realize, oh my gosh, I was being a simp. I should have backed off. Versus when you follow God, you know He's going to reciprocate. You know that when you follow Him, He is going to reciprocate with being with you even when your life is falling apart. And that's the same thing with what we see with Job. His life was falling apart, but he still trusted in God. Now, granted, he had questions for God, but he didn't doubt what God was doing. Literally, Job's life fell completely apart. But because he was remaining close to God, God rewarded him at the end of his trial and tribulation. It's just like with Jesus. When Jesus was being tempted by the devil, Jesus didn't just say, okay, I'll just do whatever you want, devil. No, he held his standards and he held his own by saying, you are not about to tempt me, Satan, because I am trusting in God. And when you trust in God, then it doesn't matter what Satan thinks. Because at the end of the day, you know that Satan's just trying to destroy you. You know that all Satan's trying to do is trap you and eventually have your soul sent to hell, because instead of choosing to follow God, you chose to follow man. You chose to follow yourself. Can't do that, folks. Final point. Stop focusing on other people so much, but instead, you should balance your time with God so that the more time you spend with God, the more you can learn so that you can help others when they need help. One of the biggest things I have learned, and I learned it in high school, and I basically learned it myself, is how can you help someone if you can't even help yourself, right? How can you help someone if you don't know how to help them, right? A lot of people say, oh, you should always be willing to help others. You should always be willing to put someone above yourself. And while that is partly true, if you're not in a position to help someone, how can you help them? Right? It's just like with, you'll see this dude who says, hey, how you doing? Hey, can you give me money? You know what he's trying to do. You know what that guy is absolutely trying to do. He's wanting you to give him money. But guess what? If you don't have money to give him, then guess what? Too bad, so sad. I ain't got money to give you, bro. Like, you got to put your foot down, because here's the thing. A lot of people will get taken advantage of because they won't put their foot down and because they don't want to come across as a bad guy. But guess what? Sometimes you got to put your foot down and say, listen, bro, I'd be willing to help you if I had the money, but I am struggling right now. I ain't got the money to help you, so I'm not about to help you. And if he says, oh, you're just a butthead, guess what? You're a butthead, right? Because that's what these dudes want. That's what people will do to you. You've got to understand that people are sometimes evil. They only care about themselves. They only want more money. They don't care about you. They don't care at all how you treat them. They just want your money. And you got to be careful about this, folks. But when you follow God, you know all he wants is for you to follow him. He's not going to ask you to give him money every time you go to church. Unlike what some pastors will do, when they say, oh, you got to give money so that way God will bless you. No, by no means is that even remotely true. If you never tithe at church, yes, that can be a bad thing, but guess what? Do you think God is going to say when you die, oh, you never gave me money, therefore you're going to hell? No! God cares about you following him. He does not want your money. And this is why you've got to understand when people are lying to you and when people are taking advantage of you, you got to say, look, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get my money so you can go screw off and do something else. Because guess what? You got to do that, folks. You got to put your foot down and say, I can't help you. Goodbye. And then eventually, maybe 6 months later, if you have the money to help that person, you can help them and say, I'm helping you this one time, and that is it. You've got to do that, folks. You've got to focus on following God and putting Him first. Then you can help people. And so with that, that is where I'm going to end this Bible study. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all have enjoyed it. And until next time, I'm Andrew Michael, and I will see you all